Okay, so have you ever felt like there's got to be something more out there? You know, like something you're supposed to be doing or some experience you're just meant to have, like a big dream, or even just like a quiet little voice inside that says, there's a different path for you.
Yeah, totally. I think most of us feel that pull at some point. That's like a basic human drive, right? That search for meaning and a purpose.
Yeah.
And it just pushes us forward. It
Yeah.
fuels our creativity, our curiosity and our desire to keep growing.
That's exactly what we're going to try to explore today. We're going to dive into Paulo Coelho's book, The Alchemist.
Oh, nice. I love that book.
You've probably heard of it, right?
Yeah, pretty much everyone has.
It's the story of Santiago, who's an Andalusian shepherd, and he goes on this whole journey to find treasure that he keeps seeing in his dreams.
It's a pretty simple story when you just describe the plot, but it's packed full of really interesting insights about how we go after what we want in life. But even more than that, I think it's about how we spot the opportunities that come up along the way as we pursue our dreams.
So let's try to break down some of the main lessons from it in our deep dive today.
Sounds good.
So basically at the beginning of the story, Santiago's this shepherd.
Right.
And he's living this pretty comfortable life in Andalusia. He's got his sheep, he's got his freedom. But then he starts having these crazy dreams over and over again.
Oh, yeah, the dream about the treasure.
Yeah, exactly. In the dream, this kid shows up and points him towards treasure that's hidden near the pyramids in Egypt.
And this dream, it's not just a one-time thing. It keeps popping up and interrupting his normal life, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting how the book uses that dream. It's like that insistent inner voice that so many people experience, that feeling of being pulled towards something bigger.
So, of course, like most of us would probably do, Santiago goes to try and get some advice.
Right.
He visits this gypsy woman, and she's super straightforward with him. She's like, that dream is a prophecy, and you got to go to Egypt and find that treasure.
I love that there's no beating around the bush with her.
Right. It's a very clear call to action. And then Santiago meets this mysterious dude named Melchizedek, and he turns out to be an old king.
Yeah, and this is where we really start digging into this whole idea of the personal legend.
Okay, so let's talk about this whole personal legend thing, because it's a pretty central idea in the book, right? Basically, it's like everyone has a true purpose in life, a destiny they're supposed to fulfill. And Melchizedek basically tells Santiago that if you really, truly desire something, the whole universe will work to help you make it happen.
It's a pretty big idea, right? What stands out to you the most about that?
It's just so hopeful, right? Like so inspiring. This idea that if we just listen to our hearts and go after what we truly want, the universe is on our side.
I love that. I think it's really about this idea of getting into alignment. When your desires line up with what's meant to be, it's almost like you tap into this energy that carries you along. It's not necessarily about magic or anything, but more about becoming aware of all the opportunities and synchronicities that start showing up when you're truly committed to something.
Yeah.
So I think for our listeners, what this suggests is that paying attention to those persistent longings and the things that really light you up might be the first step in figuring out what your own personal legend is.
Totally. And to help him figure out his personal legend, Melchizedek gives Santiago this tool. It's called Urim and Thummim, and there are these two stones, a black one and a white one.
Yeah, he explains that they're like little helpers for Santiago's intuition. They're not supposed to replace it.
Right, like a gut check.
Exactly. So if he's getting signs or omens but needs a little confirmation, they can help him answer those yes or no questions. But ultimately, I think it's really emphasizing the importance of being able to read the world around us and trust our instincts. How do you think someone could develop that kind of awareness in their own life?
I think it starts with noticing things, right? Like paying attention to our gut feelings, those little nudges we get and the patterns that keep showing up in our lives.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
So Santiago's got his guidance from the gypsy woman. He's got Urim and Thummim, and he decides to sell all of his sheep and head off to Tangier. But then almost as soon as he gets there, he gets robbed and loses everything.
Yeah, that part always gets me. Talk about a setback.
Totally. And it happens right at the beginning.
But I think that's a really important part of the story. It shows that going after your dreams is rarely straightforward. There's going to be obstacles and challenges and moments that make you want to give up. It's like a test.
So true. So what do you think that kind of challenge reveals about someone's commitment to their dream?
I think it's about resilience. Do you keep going even when things get tough? How badly do you want it? Santiago could have just gone back home, but he decides to stay and try to figure things out.
Yeah, he ends up working for this crystal merchant to make some money. And even though that's not directly related to his treasure hunt, that part of his journey is super interesting too. He learns a lot about perseverance, and he sees how the merchant is kind of stuck in his own unfulfilled desires.
Right, exactly. The crystal merchant has this dream of going to Mecca, but he's too scared to actually go for it.
He's scared of change.
Exactly. He's comfortable where he is. And through their conversations, you see how much regret he has for not taking that chance.
It's like even if you have a comfortable life, it can become like a cage if it's keeping you from chasing your personal legend.
That's a really good point. It makes you wonder how often we do that too, right? Like the crystal merchant, we let fear stop us from pursuing our own dreams.
It's definitely something to think about. So after working for the crystal merchant for a while, Santiago finally earns enough money to keep going on his journey, and he joins a caravan that's crossing the desert towards Egypt.
And that part of the journey is where he meets the Englishman.
Oh, yeah, the guy who's obsessed with alchemy.
Right. The Englishman introduces Santiago to all these new ideas about transformation and the pursuit of knowledge. He's searching for the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life.
It's like a whole other layer to the story.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting how the Englishman's approach is all about intellectual learning and studying.
But Santiago's journey is way more about experience.
Exactly. Like he's learning by doing.
So the caravan makes it to an oasis, and that's where two really important things happen for Santiago. He falls head over heels in love with this woman named Fatima.
And he has that vision of the tribal attack.
Right. It's a premonition.
Yeah. So let's talk about Fatima for a second. I think she plays a really important role in the story. She and Santiago fall in love, but she totally encourages him to keep following his dream.
Which I think says a lot about the kind of love they have.
Totally. She gets it. She's not threatened by his need to go on this adventure. It's like she understands that real love supports personal growth and purpose. And then there's that scene where Santiago has that vision, and he's brave enough to share it, even though it might seem crazy.
And it turns out he's right. He's becoming more and more intuitive, right?
Right, like he's learning to trust his instincts and listen to that inner voice. It raises a good question for us, too. How can we tell the difference between genuine intuition and wishful thinking?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about the feeling you get. Like, does it feel right in your gut, or does it feel like you're trying to force something? Anyway, after he warns the tribe about the attack, Santiago finally meets the alchemist himself.
And that's a major turning point for him.
Right. The alchemist becomes his mentor.
Exactly. He introduces Santiago to this concept of the soul of the world, the idea that everything is connected, that there's this energy or spirit that flows through all of creation.
It's like realizing that we're all part of something much bigger than ourselves, right? What do you think about that?
I think it's a beautiful concept. It suggests that our actions have meaning and that we're not just isolated individuals. Everything we do has an impact on the world around us.
So the alchemist teaches Santiago a bunch of important lessons about listening to his heart, overcoming his fears, and paying attention to the omens that life throws his way. And those are like recurring themes throughout the whole book, right?
Totally. The heart represents our intuition and our deepest desires. Fear is the thing that holds us back from pursuing our personal legend. And omens are like little messages from the universe giving us clues and guiding us along the way. It makes me think, what kinds of signs are we all missing in our own lives because we're just too busy or distracted to notice?
That's so true. I think we've all had moments where we look back and we're like, oh, I should have listened to that gut feeling.
Exactly.
So the alchemist and Santiago continue on their journey, and they end up getting captured by a group of tribal warriors. And that leads to this amazing scene where the alchemist tells Santiago that he can transform himself into the wind.
I love that part. It's such a powerful test for Santiago.
He's terrified, of course, but he has to draw on everything he's learned up until this point.
Right. He has to trust himself and his connection to the soul of the world. He starts talking to the desert, the wind, and the sun, and he manages to create a huge windstorm that frees them.
He actually does it.
I know, it's such a cool moment. I think it shows how Santiago has moved beyond just understanding things intellectually, and he's tapping into a deeper connection with the world.
And finally, after all that, he makes it to the pyramids.
The destination he's been dreaming about.
But then he gets robbed again.
I know.
And it turns out that one of the robbers had a dream about a treasure buried in a ruined church back in Spain. And guess what? That's the same church where Santiago had his original dream.
Oh, wow, it all comes full circle. It's such a cool twist. What do you make of that?
It's like the journey led him back to where he started, but he's not the same person anymore. He's grown and changed so much along the way.
Exactly. And that change is the real treasure.
So Santiago goes back to Spain, and he goes to the ruined church, and just like in the robber's dream, he finds a chest full of gold and jewels buried under a sycamore tree. It's pretty crazy that he had to travel all the way to Egypt and back to realize that the treasure was in his homeland the whole time.
It's a really powerful metaphor. It shows us that sometimes the things we're looking for are closer than we think, and that the journey itself, with all its challenges and lessons, is just as valuable as the destination.
It's about the growth and self-discovery that happens along the way. Santiago didn't just find gold, he gained wisdom, love, and faith in himself. And now he's got the means to go back to Fatima and be with the woman he loves.
It's a beautiful ending.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into The Alchemist, there are a few key themes that really stand out to me. The idea of having a personal legend and the importance of actually going after it, even when it seems impossible.
Totally. And the need to be aware of omens and signs. Life is always giving us information, but we need to be paying attention and open to receiving it.
Right. And I think the book also highlights the constant struggle between fear and faith. Like, Santiago was scared a lot of the time, but he kept going because he believed in his dream.
Yeah, and we can't forget about alchemy, which is like a metaphor for personal transformation.
Exactly. Like, the challenges we face and the lessons we learn along the way refine us and help us grow. What parts of your own life feel like they're going through a transformation right now?
Oh, man, that's a big question,
Ugh.
I think. I think learning to be more present and mindful is a huge one for me, like trying to be more aware of my thoughts and feelings and really appreciate the little things.
That's awesome. And we also see in the book that true love doesn't hold you back from pursuing your dreams. It actually supports and encourages you.
Totally. I think Fatima is a great example of that.
So for everyone listening, I hope you can take away some of the treasures that Santiago discovered, not just the gold, but the wisdom, the love, and the journey of self-discovery. It's a reminder that the path to our dreams is rarely a straight line, but it's the twists and turns, the detours, and the challenges that make it all worthwhile.
And maybe the biggest takeaway is to listen to your heart. Trust that inner voice that's whispering to you about what's possible.
So on that note, I want to leave you with one final thought. Think about a dream that you hold dear, something that feels like your own personal legend. What's one small action you could take today to move just a little bit closer to understanding its potential meaning in your life?
And take some time to think about which parts of Santiago's story resonated with you the most. What challenges or lessons really stood out to you? How can you apply those insights to your own aspirations and the path you're on right now?